Joined on the phone today by author Ozzy Inguanzo, talking about his new book, Zombies on Film. How are you today, Ozzy?
I'm great, Dustin. How's it going?
It's going well. It's great to be talking with you.
Likewise.
Well, I want to ask you about the new book. Author of Zombies on Film, so you obviously know your stuff. What can the listeners expect from this book?
Well, I think what people will like in the book is it really tells you the evolution of the zombie genre, where they came from, how these films came to be, and throughout the decades, how the different time periods and the different filmmakers have kind of a reflection of that time and how they've inspired each other and influenced each other throughout, leading us where we are today, which is, they seem to be more popular than ever. Television, video games, movies, and it's interesting to see that kind of that history and what influenced the storytellers behind these terrifying creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a couple different places where people say maybe zombies originated from. You've got, White Zombie, but those were kind of like mind control, kind of slave zombies. And of course, Romero's films. Where do you think that they originate actually in films?
In films, which is really what brought them to our shores and what brought them to kind of popular culture, they started back. They were a product of in the late 20s and early 30s when talkies were just starting. There was a kind of a bit of a horror boom in Hollywood. They were doing movies like Bela Lugosi's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And a lot of these movies were all based on very, very famous literary. They were all literary adaptations. And I think that what happened actually, in my research, what happened was there were these two filmmakers, and they said, look, this horror boom. There's a horror boom going on, and we should do an original take. And they had read, and it was popular at the time, a book called The Magic Island, which was kind of a travelogue about this mysterious folklore going on in Haiti. And they wrote that into this kind of romantic melodrama, and they cast Bela Lugosi in the movie, and the movie did very, very well. But it wasn't really based on a famous literary property, a very famous. But so I think the studios didn't really latch on to it. There was a bit of a low rent kind of monster. So this idea of them being minions was around for a while, really until George Romero, with his 1968 masterpiece, Night of the Living Dead, really until he looked at the genre, and he wasn't really even he was influenced by those types of movies, but he was really influenced by Richard Matheson's post-apocalyptic novel, I Am Legend, which has been made into many films. Primarily sure. I Am Legend with Will Smith, The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. There was a Vincent Price film that was based on that book called The Last Man on Earth, and Romero looked at these characters who were vampires, the man's last day on Earth, and he said, well, what would happen, the first day? And what if they weren't vampires? What if they were ghouls? He didn't even think of them primarily as zombies, because zombies were, these minions, these, Haitian, kind of with this Haitian folklore. So at that point, it really changed, and he made that film independently, and it really struck a chord with audiences.
Yeah, most definitely. Again, we're on the phone today with Ozzy Inguanzo. He's the author of the book Zombies on Film. And of course, you mentioned the masterpiece, Night of the Living Dead. It's been almost 50 years later, and now it seems zombies are at their all-time peak. You got The Walking Dead and so many other things. What do you think it is about zombies that people love so much these days?
I think, strangely, people always, they say, well, what is it about zombies? Why are they back? And, I'm sure there's experts in social culture, society, and psychology that'll, talk about, doomsday scenarios or things like that. I really think it has to do with the fact that these stories and these characters, the survivors, in a lot of these new films and television shows are really well written. People are able to relate to these characters and relate to their situation, and there's really good content, coming out of Hollywood and coming out of independent filmmakers, and they're able to tell all kinds of stories using these characters. So I think a lot of that has to do with their popularity, and they're great bad guys. I mean, they're very simple to understand. They're very simple to wrap your head around. What it is that they want. We don't need a lot of setup, and it's I think they make for really fun bad guys. I think zombies and Nazis are probably the best, the go-to for instant antagonists.
Sure.
In pop culture now.
Well, and I have to ask, I know you work in film as well. Do you see the zombies getting more popular, or do you think, no pun intended, do you think they'll die out sometime? I know there's usually ebbs and flows with this sort of thing.
Yeah, they haven't shown they're still around, but I think I mean with all movies, I think movies kind of tend to fade when there's too much saturation. But I really think I believe that if there's good stories and there's good characters, I think audiences are always looking for good stories, and as long as there's good stories, I think the audience will show up, and especially now, they can stream it on Netflix, they can watch it on the plane, on their iPhones, on their iPads. So there's a lot of content out there, and I think if the stories are good and the characters are riveting, I think people will tune in.
And I got to ask you, Ozzy, I know you probably went through tens of thousands of films writing this book. Could you point to one that's maybe a favorite, and maybe one that maybe people overlook or might not know about?
There's a couple, and many people have seen, but if you haven't seen Shaun of the Dead, Edgar Wright's film and Simon Pegg's film, it's really, really a great film. It's very well made. It's a very funny movie, and that's I think that's kind of a favorite of mine. There's also a film by Lucio Fulci called Zombie from the late '70s, an Italian filmmaker. That's a really, really kind of quintessential zombie movie. It's a lot of fun. There's some scenes in there of there's a shark versus a zombie. I know that sounds crazy, but it's definitely worth taking a look at that movie. It's a really, 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 really fun zombie film. But certainly George Romero's zombie films, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead is a great film. There's a lot of good ones out there. It's hard to choose,
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, the book Zombies on Film is out now, and I know you are always working on something. So is there another project in the works, or maybe something else that's coming up?
I'm working with Rizzoli. Is a great publisher. If you guys get a chance, they've got a lot of good books out there. But I'm hopefully working with them on another book that we're in the kind of the early stages. And on the film side, I've got a couple of projects going on right now. Right now, I'm doing some consulting on the Wolverine film that's coming up with Hugh Jackman, and a lot of irons in the fire. Keep them busy.
Excellent. Well, again, Ozzy, I appreciate you taking some time out. Looking forward to the book Zombies on Film, and we'll see where zombies go from here.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
And again, that was author Ozzy Inguanzo, and talking about his new book, Zombies on Film, available now.